I had just finished flight school and been watching a ton of Shark Tank.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, we can, just sort of cobble something together. And so I came to visit him, and he didn't really know I was coming. And I knocked on his front door, and no one answered. And I knew that he was there because his car was there. And so I climbed onto the carport next to the house and was walking along the roof. And then was just like knocking on his bedroom window, and just like, and he couldn't hear me because he had headphones in and was playing keyboard, and so I just ripped the window open and just like flew in basically, and he was like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
Right.
And I was like, "Hey, bro, I have an idea. What do you think of this?" And it sort of went from there.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Push Podcast. This is the podcast where we explore the real stories behind what makes entrepreneurs and business owners the successes they are today. I am Jack Ferguson, a small business growth strategist, and I will be your host. I believe the best way to learn and be inspired is to listen to the experiences and stories of those you respect. Their real experiences, their real story, warts and all. Honest storytelling is what this is all about. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you are listening to this. Hello and welcome to episode 1, season 2 of the Push Podcast. Today I am speaking to Gauranga Magriplis and Jack Buscombe, who are the co-founders of Airshare. Now, Airshare is a platform that sells flight experiences, particularly scenic flights, helicopter flights, and skydives. It's the first time I've spoken to co-founders on the podcast, but it was great to be able to compare and contrast the perspectives they both held while building the same company. Being in the travel industry during COVID makes for some interesting listening, and they have many entertaining stories about how they dealt with chaotic clients throughout their careers and while they were building Airshare. We spoke about the challenges of getting your startup off the ground, and it was fascinating to hear what it took to actually get Airshare moving. Some people don't know this, but it can be very difficult to keep moving forward when nothing seems to be going right, particularly in the first few months of embarking on a new venture. A fun episode to record. I had a great time. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Let's get started. All right, so today we're here with the co-founders of Airshare, Gauranga Magriplis and Jack Buscombe. Guys, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Let's start off with talking about what Airshare is. Gauranga, what is Airshare?
So Airshare is a online marketplace for scenic flights and charter flights. We built a network of partners right around Australia, and we sell latent capacity and experiences on their behalf.
Right, so in the tourism industry?
Yes.
And COVID hit this year. How was that, Gauranga?
Well, I think the first thing that made a difference to sort of our revenue was actually the bushfires.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the first... when was that? In February, that sort of took hold. That's when we really started to notice a diminish in demand in some of the locations that we serviced. And then due to COVID, we weren't turning any revenue for a period of about 6 months.
Ouch, yeah.
Yeah, lots of cancellations and refunds too, which was lovely.
Yeah, right. Sounds fun. So where did it first start dipping? Like with the bushfires, was that Victoria? It started like demand dropping there, or
a lot in Airlie Beach as well, because people just weren't travelling around.
Yep.
A lot of people weren't coming to Australia as well because of it, and it was a little bit miserable.
Right. So you guys rely a lot on international tourism, do you, Jack?
Yeah, sometimes. Also with that, a lot of the aircraft was being used to service like the water drops on the fires. So we basically had no use of a lot of the choppers and the planes that we're using. Sorry, what was the question?
No, just how much you rely on international tourists.
Oh, international tourists, yeah. So not as much as we sort of expected.
Right.
I think we do pretty well in the domestic market. Most of our customer bases are like birthdays, wedding anniversaries, that sort of thing. But yeah, I know that it's huge in the Chinese market, like specifically, yeah.
Oh yeah, on that point, it was terrible because we were losing the ability to book aircraft, and on the other side of that coin as well, losing demand as well. So we lost both sides of the two-sided marketplace, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds real fun. When did you start? Like how long? We started off on a little bit of a somber note. How long ago did you actually start this company?
We launched and incorporated in October, November 2018.
Right. Okay, so you've been going about 2 years,
Yeah.
but 18 months in is when it started to get really hard by the sounds.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, people will listen to this and go, well, that sucks, having to put up with 6 months of little revenue. Entrepreneurship's not always fun. Were you guys like born entrepreneurs, or is it something that you grew into?
I'm not really sure. I've always dabbled in bits and pieces, like small home businesses and all that sort of stuff, selling odd wares to the neighbours, etc. When I was fairly young. I know when we were at uni, we talked about it a lot actually, but neither of us had any idea of where to start or what to do.
Right. And what was your first dabble, Jack?
Well, yeah, when we were talking about it, like I'd always dreamt of it and would love chatting about it, but I just didn't have the gumption or knowledge to actually start anything. And that sort of, I think that turned around when I figured out how to make websites and stuff.
Right.
It's a good skill to have and to get started, and then you sort of get people onto your website and you start pushing things and the ball starts rolling, and then it's pretty exciting after that. But yeah, I wouldn't even know how to get started up until sort of 2017-ish when we were starting this. I mean, we were just twiddling our thumbs thinking we could make this crazy awesome platform, and it was very average, and we didn't get anything done for like the whole year pretty much.
So how did you come up with the idea? Like, what made you think, let's get started on this?
He came to me, actually.
Should I tell the story? I had just finished flight school and been watching a ton of Shark Tank.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, we can, just sort of cobble something together. And so I came to visit him, and he didn't really know I was coming. And I knocked on his front door, and no one answered. And I knew that he was there because his car was there. And so I climbed onto the carport next to the house and was walking along the roof. And then was just like knocking on his bedroom window, and just like, and he couldn't hear me because he had headphones in and was playing keyboard, and so I just like ripped the window open and just like flew in basically, and he was like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
Right.
And I was like, "Hey, bro, I have an idea. What do you think of this?" And it sort of went from there.
Right. How'd you come up with the idea? Was it just like, I mean, this is you got basically an aggregator by the sounds for a lot of things, so. How did you know that was, or what made you think that was a need?
So initially, I had just finished flight training, and I had a commercial pilot license, well, still do, and a multi-engine command instrument rating. And I was thinking about problems in the industry that we could solve, or gaps in the market that we could look at. And initially, we toyed with the idea of setting up a platform that would instantly quote and book a charter flight from A to B and ride share that. And we, sort of got to work on that and realized it was going to be way too hard, not a huge market, and require probably a ton of capital to make it work. So we sort of, iterated a little bit and ended up with a experience platform of which we do a little bit of charter, and we help our charter partners fill their latent capacity.
Right. Okay, so why don't you take us through like that first 6 months, Jack? You mentioned that not much happened during that time. Was this your first businesses, or?
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
At first, legit business that wasn't built on nothing. Yes, yeah.
We won't go too far into that one. So what did that first 6 months look like? What was the mistakes you made? What did you do right?
Well, I mean, G came to my house, jumped through my window, and we sort of made a pact that night. We were just like actually going to give it a good crack. So I think it was like the next day we went on Codecademy, started learning like the basics, HTML, CSS, and just made like a website. And I had a friend who had been to an accelerator at UQ, iLab, and it was like 10 grand equity free. So we just thought like that is too good to be true. So we applied for that and somehow got into it. Got through to like a boot camp.
So you're saying you got 10 grand and for nothing, basically? Like you didn't have to give equity in return, or you did?
That's if you got through the boot camp.
Okay.
Which we did not. But we put together a deck and pitched it like 3 times over a weekend, and we didn't get it. So we were back to the drawing board, and we tried to sort of find developers to help us build this extravagant platform that we had in our mind. And we went to Gumtree to source the finest talent of Brisbane. That was fun. So basically we're like, come work for us for free, guys. We're going to help you in your long-term goals of becoming the best developer. Anyway, we spent 6 months just like writing PHP. I can't even remember what it was, but eventually it just fizzled down and we were just sort of left looking at each other like, what do we do now? And that's when we went to our next accelerator, and that's when things started to happen.
Right. So with these people from Gumtree you're getting in, did you actually get anyone to do any work, or?
Not really, no, not at all.
Okay.
We sat in a room and tried to write stuff in Notepad, and nothing was actually published or made.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So 6 months in, it's sort of like, well, not much has happened here. We've mucked around a little bit, but nothing. So what made you change from, okay, we got to do something differently, and what did you do differently?
A lot of that came through the accelerator. So it was basically like, get your first partner as soon as possible. And I think G talked to some guys in Brizzy and basically pulled their arm, and they eventually said yes. And then we were just like trying to push single seat flights on helicopters around the Brisbane CBD because they had heaps of spare capacity. And if they didn't fill that third seat, they would just have to cancel the flight. So that was our sort of goal to do that, and I think we made our first sale in like October of that year.
That's it? November? Late November, I think. Yeah.
Anyway, It was just a straight WordPress site with WooCommerce, and it was crappy as anything, but we got people to pay us, and yeah.
So how'd you get your first person on board?
We don't know how the first organic customers found us. I'm going to be honest with you. I think we were lucky because it was around Christmas time,
right? And
people were looking for that sort of thing.
I suppose I'm sort of more meaning on the supply side.
Oh, on the supply side. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was. Can I talk about two?
Sure. So
there was one, and he was I won't say who he is or who he worked for, but he was the chief pilot for one of the charter companies down at Archerfield, and we went and pitched the initial premise, which was, A to B, instant quoting, booking, and ride sharing that. And he was like a tough nut to crack, and we chatted to him for like an hour and a half, and he was just like, "Nah, boys, like I don't believe that you can do this." And I was
he
like,
was right.
Yeah. No, well, he didn't believe that we could write software to do that.
Right.
And I was like hitting him with things like Elon Musk right now is like landing rockets on drone ships, and you don't think we can write some software to like automate a process that your charter pilots do in half an hour? Like, come on, we can. Anyway, finally sort of got a maybe out of him. But then after that, we decided to go in a different direction. And that's when we ended up going for experiences. And then so we actually landed our first partner. Can I say who they are?
If you want.
V Squared Helicopters. And that was sort of what he just spoke about. And I think I just spoke to the guy for like half an hour on and off for like a couple of weeks. Ended up going down there to see him for a meeting, and we got there, and then he wasn't there. So do you remember that? So we were pretty happy about that. We were like, oh my God.
You were happy about them not being there.
No, I'm being sarcastic.
Oh, okay,
like
right.
we were not happy.
Yeah,
Like, we
okay.
were like
Well,
crying out
some
loud.
people are happy that like lets them off the hook. It's like,
No.
I don't have to do a sale now. I don't
No.
have to try.
No, we were a bit annoyed, and then eventually got him back on the phone, and he sort of agreed and was like, "All right, I need you to." This was while we were in the accelerator program as well. And he was like, "Okay, I need you to write up a contract and send it to me, and all this stuff." And he ended up giving us a 10% commission, which is nothing, and that sort of changed down the track. And then the next problem was, well, how the hell do I write a contract for these guys, and what do I put in it? So that was interesting as well, but we got there.
Templatecontracts.com. Thank you very much.
No, I wrote that one. I actually wrote that one.
So, and when you're doing this selling and this type of thing, is that something that came naturally to you guys? Like, was that hard, or was that?
I've always been alright at it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Jack?
I was crap.
Right.
Yeah, I think now that I have the confidence, I can do it pretty well. But back then when you don't have any confidence, you go into it thinking that it's not going to work in the end. So, yeah.
And as part of my homework, I see you did some telemarketing in the past.
Yeah,
that didn't help?
2 days. No, that was probably the worst, most morale-killing job I've ever had in my life.
We both did that, actually, and I got him the job.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How long did you last?
I lasted 2 weeks.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. I lasted 2 weeks.
Is this like a commission-only thing? Or?
Yep.
Okay, right.
Yeah, selling demented people cheap electricity.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I think, I got 2 sales across the 2 days that I did it, and both of them, the person on the phone didn't have any idea about what they were signing up for, but at the time I'm just like, all right, well, I'm just going to go through with this, and
right.
hopefully I saved them a few bucks, but I don't think so.
Right. Did you make any sales, Gauranga?
I made a few, but not many. It would have averaged like a couple a day. It was tough. It was really tough.
And that, like, you would be making hundreds of calls a day, right? Or is that the type? Oh, that's what I imagine. I've never done it, but
It is.
Yeah, sometimes you just sort of sit there looking at the screen, waiting to press the call next button. You're just like, I don't want to. It was pretty miserable. My last call was a pretty devastating one. This lady, she was like talking to me, and she was like, "Oh, you sound like a lovely young man, but like I don't really give an expletive because my so-and-so just died and my such-and-such just died and I'm having to look after, my granddaughter and all this other stuff." And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I pretty much just packed up and walked out and went and spoke to a local restaurant and asked for a job there instead.
Right. They gave you one?
They did, actually, yeah.
Fair enough. Doing what?
The dishes.
Right, cool. So where did you guys, we'll start with you, Gauranga, like what was your first job?
My first job was at a fun park on the sunny coast.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore.
Right.
Was that the one in Badram?
Maroochydore.
Oh, yeah.
Top Shots.
Nothing to do with your work, of course.
No, I left way before it. Maybe me leaving was what collapsed. I don't know.
Right, and what after that?
After that, telemarketing.
Telemarketing. Yeah. We're up to the restaurant, and then how long were you at the restaurant for?
About a year.
Okay.
About a year.
All right. Well, you stuck with that one.
Well, this was the telemarketing in the restaurant was first year uni, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is while you're doing your pilot's
While
license.
I was studying aviation at Griffith. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And why aviation?
Finished high school, took a gap year. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I was going to New Zealand with some friends one day. Always loved flying, always loved planes, and saw the pilots getting on board the aircraft and went, I reckon I could do that.
And you can now.
Yeah.
So you finished that. Now you've got a chance, obviously, to go out and fly as a pilot, I presume. Not such a bad decision not to do it now that we see what's happened with COVID and everything, right? But
Well, we're still in the industry, so...
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But why not just start flying?
Well, I can always go back.
You can, yep.
Not right now, probably.
No.
Yeah.
That's the answer?
Well, the answer was what I gave you before, was I really wanted to get involved with startups and I really wanted to start a business.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the answer.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so have you worked for anyone else in the meantime?
In between that restaurant and now,
Yeah.
I worked at Treasury Casino for a number of years, and then while we were, getting Airshare started, had a bit of, a few consulting gigs here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing a bit of, social media marketing and all that sort of stuff for a few clients.
Right.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah, some good, some not so good.
Tell us about the not so good.
Sure.
That's what everyone wants to hear.
Yeah. I had this one client who was a little bit difficult to deal with. They often spoke in circles and didn't make much sense. And I would sort of have to, after a meeting, list the things that we spoke about and then sort of say, so I'm going to get this done for you, yes. And then they'd be like, yeah. And then sometimes, actually most of the time, I'd get a communication of some sort at, midnight or 4 a.m. or whatever. I'd wake up, switch on my phone, and there'd be like, 3 emails and a missed call. Oh my God. And, it'd be like previous day, they'd said, don't do this. And then the next day it'd be like, why haven't you done what I just asked you not to do? And I'm just like, I can't take this.
Right. That's some next level gaslighting right there.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Interesting. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And where did everything start for you, Jack?
Everything started for me back in school when I was delivering pamphlets. I still reckon that's probably the best job I've ever had. Hey.
Really?
Yeah, honestly. Okay. It paid. I think I had the best paying pamphlet delivery gig on the sunny coast.
Right.
It was ludicrous. I was getting like $200-$300 a week.
Right.
Yeah.
How much work's that?
Yeah.
What's that?
Huge money.
Yeah, huge money. Well, for a 15-year-old, it's all right. And then I went and worked for Pizza Capers, and that was hellish, just doing dishes for a horrible boss. And pretty much the same thing. It's like, don't do this, you don't do it, and then it's, why didn't you do this? But I think a lot of people can relate to someone like that.
Yeah.
And then moved to Brisbane, went to university and worked at Target, run-of-the-mill job. And then I started Coles when we started Airshare. And I had been doing that for a while as like a cathartic experience to sort of clear my head, do some nonsensical work, just to give me some clarity on the things that were happening in Airshare and sort of time to sit on what we should do next and that sort of thing.
And you needed to be working at Coles to do that? You couldn't just go for a walk or something?
Yeah, I could go for a walk, but didn't
have the same effect?
Didn't have the same effect. Right. No, I don't know. I think I'm a sucker for punishment, he kept telling me.
Okay, fair enough. I remember working in a supermarket when I was young, and I hated it so much.
Yeah.
And I look back on it now, and yeah, I probably would, if I was a bit older, I might have enjoyed just how easy it can be just to stack the veggies on the shelf, and you get paid and does it.
Yeah.
There's sort of no...
Have a few extra mates in your life, yeah.
Yeah. So, interesting, cathartic. And you must have stopped doing that though, did you?
I did, yeah. It was, the cost of going to do a shift at Coles became higher than just not doing it, I suppose. Like, we would get X amount of calls at night and or missed sales, whatever.
Yep.
And that value of missed sales of doing a 5-hour shift at Coles at night would be higher than what I'd get paid at Coles. So I just eventually thought, stuff this. I'll just not work at Coles anymore and focus on the business.
Right.
I probably did that a bit too late, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I suppose in like your business is you're building actual brand and something that has value beyond the shift, I guess.
And it was a lot more enjoyable working on your own business than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what's some interesting stories you guys have had since you started, since Airshare's begun? Like we've worked out that, first 6 months was interesting, and then you sort of turned the corner after that.
We had a cracker. When we were in our accelerator, the one that we got into, we had a guy come in from like a marketing firm, and he basically said, this is how you grow your business, whatever. You can do giveaways, you can do...
It's just a whole bunch of marketing strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we decided to do a giveaway on Facebook. And it was like a week-long thing. Comment your name and comment a friend and get an entry into the competition, whatever. So the week finishes, we get a couple hundred votes, whatever, and comes to deciding who it is to pick. And the prize was a single seat on a helicopter. And the maximum weight limit for that is quite low. You would imagine, lower than you would imagine.
Okay.
So I'm going through all the comments on the post and trying to look for someone who looks skinny.
Well, I had suggested we put some T's and C's on it, and he was like, "Nah, I'll pick the person. I'll pick the person. I'll eyeball it. They'll be the right weight. They'll be below the limit.
I'll make sure they're below the limit."
Okay, I think I can see where this one's going. But anyway, keep
so
going.
we should have. It's a lesson.
T's and C's.
Anyway, we should have. But I picked someone, and she was like a small, thin, 50-year-old woman, whatever. And I send a message like, "Congratulations, you've won the Airshare giveaway. How excited are you?" Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, "Oh my God, I love this. My husband is going to really enjoy it." And I'm like, "Okay, so can I just have his name and his weight so I can provide it to the pilot?" And he was quite a big boy. I think he was like 150 something kilos. And then I had to sort of tell her, "Oh, okay, sorry, well, you can't actually put him on the flight." And she just throttled me. Hey,
really?
Yeah, she
What'd
just
she
went
say?
to town on me. Disgusting business. Blah blah blah.
But had you said in the giveaway that it can be for someone else? Like, I would have assumed if you picked her, it's got to be her on the plane. Or on the
No, we
helicopter.
weren't very specific.
There was
unfortunately.
there was nothing at all. Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
just,
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
there were no real T's and C's. Anyway, we just wanted to make them happy, so we were willing to do whatever it took. And so that was a pretty nerve-wracking night for me. Hey.
So what did you do?
We made some pretty drastic changes and eventually got him a helicopter on his own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how you do it.
Yeah, it ended up costing a fair bit, but it just put the dispute to rest.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you had any other interesting customers over your time?
I mean, we've had quite a few. We've had some weird encounters, like people wanting to fly cages of birds cross country. There was this one lady that wanted to. I can't remember what they were. Just, I don't know, pigeons for argument's sake. She had like 5. Yeah, she had 5 pigeons or something, and she contacted us wanting a quote to fly from Perth to Melbourne because she didn't want to drive them cross country because she was moving house. And I was like, "What? You want to spend like tens of thousands of dollars transporting some birds?" And I also loved the irony of the fact that she was putting flying creatures in a flying machine. And
They should fly themselves,
yeah,
you say?
Yeah, well, that's what I said. Like, they should just fly there. And she was contacting us through the live chat on our website, and then she proceeded to give me the name and age of each of the bird that she was, and I was like, this person is having me on for sure, but no, they were legit. Like,
Right.
And then when I told her what the price was going to be roughly, she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll think about it." Like,
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking large price?
Yeah, like, 80, 90K. Yeah.
From Perth to Melbourne, was it?
Yeah.
That's a pretty expensive
in
flight
a
from,
small jet.
from Perth to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
If you got the cash, go for it.
Yeah, I suppose. So as you're moving through this business, as you're building it, so the second 6 months of it, is that when it's starting to take off a bit, or is that fair to say?
Yeah. Mid to late 2019 was when we started getting some good sales traction.
Right.
Yeah. We had probably learned how to do SEO, online ads, and a whole bunch of other things that we sort of learnt through trial and error and and talking to people and YouTube videos. But yeah, that was when we started to actually turn some money.
Cool. And you talk about Jack in your notes. You talked about not asking for permission anymore to get it off the ground. How did that look?
I don't want to incriminate ourselves, but I suppose I'll do it for the podcast. Why not? So we get our first partner, and things are going really well, and then I think we cold emailed like 200 or something charter companies and got one response from a guy who was already sort of on the back foot and like, yeah, sounds interesting, but I don't really want to deal with you guys because you don't know anything and you're young guys and whatnot. So whatever. And then I'm talking to someone else in the accelerator and they just sort of say, well, why don't you just list them and then ask for permission later? So we did exactly that, and I think we added just about every single charter company in Australia to our website.
Right.
And and was sort of hoping that people would book, and then we can go to the charter companies saying, hey, can we partner with you? We've got customers that are desperate to fly with you guys. And I think that's a better sales pitch than going to them first. And yeah. Anyway.
Saying I might be able to bring you customers. I've already got your customers.
Yeah, I've already got your customers.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so what did the conversation look like then once you approached them with that?
Generally pretty good, actually.
Most worked, some backfired real badly.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The Adelaide skydive incident.
Yeah. It's not a good way to go. I think if we were going back, I would personally prefer to just like do one thing really well as opposed to cover the whole of Australia. Pretty shit.
Okay. Yeah, right. So you can't just say Adelaide skydiving and leave us with that. What happened there?
Well, that was you sort of handled that one. That was like a $2,500-$3,000 client, and we butchered that one.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Well, yeah, it wasn't too bad, but it just ended up costing us a lot more because the guys like, well, I think they had raised the price of their product since the time when we listed it, and it was like an extra $100 or something per person, and we're just like, all right, well, this is going to cost us a bunch more money. Is there a way that we can work something out? And it's just like, no, you've listed our products on your site, and they weren't happy with that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's happened a few times.
Okay.
Probably not to that degree, but yeah.
So how does the business model work then? Like do they the customer get a discount if they book through you?
No, it's all the same, but we take a commission on each booking.
Right. So, but I mean, I'm just thinking why the customer books through you instead of through the actual operator.
Generally, a lot of these operators can't be found online.
Okay.
A lot of these operators can't take bookings online.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons that we're better at taking bookings than them, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like the mechanism for it.
Literally, yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. And you've also listed here that during your growth, paid ads weren't working at all for a while, and then one day they started working.
Yeah. What's that look? We got like no sales for the first year when we were doing paid ads, and then come Christmas time, they just exploded somehow. And I think whenever we were setting up ads, I was personally expecting them to fail almost always, but just because that's how it had been. And then we had heaps of success in Christmas.
Right. And what do you think changed?
The time.
Just the time.
The season.
The ads weren't any better. It was just that the market was ready for it then?
Maybe the ads were a bit better. We haven't had very good tracking of that to make like a proper distinction as to why these are working better, but I think a lot of it's just like the time, the season. Right.
Okay. So, but then coming into the next year, we're hitting 2020 now though, aren't we? And that's when all the interesting stuff started to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think the pop that you're talking about was late October 2019, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a few good months, and then 2020 hits, and presumably the ads aren't working as well now.
Yeah, customer acquisition started to balloon
Yeah.
at sort of around the time that, holidays were ending and bushfires were starting, and all sorts of stuff was going haywire.
So when did you first start thinking, well, we've put a fair bit of time into this, maybe 18 months, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice, I assume, when you go, this is going to be a real battle for a long time?
When did we start thinking that? Well, sort of during COVID and kind of recently, coming out the other side. Well, we had an awesome pop after COVID ended. We switched the ads back on. We're acquiring customers really cheaply again. And we made a couple of decisions sort of based on that, or I think I made the decisions kind of based on that. And we were like, yeah, all right, we're out of the woods here. Let's go hell for leather. And I think there was an amount of cabin fever involved in that, and people were just excited to be back outside, with the exception of Victoria. And we were selling a lot of stuff again. But then things started to slow down, and sort of as we speak, customer acquisition costs are ballooning again, and it's getting a little bit tough.
So, and when you say when COVID ended, you mean the first COVID restrictions? I assume?
I suppose. Well, the long lockdown that we went through.
That first one, yeah. Because remember, I was in Victoria for a lot of this.
Yeah.
So COVID's only just
I say
ended
COVID,
for me. The restrictions.
I say COVID ended. It still has not even ended. But the
restrictions,
the serious restrictions in Queensland and other states. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's interesting because you get out of those restrictions and it goes up again. You're assuming it's all going to be right. And then what do you think it is now that people aren't, doing this as much?
Well, that's a whole nother question in itself. We're in an economic downturn. We sell a somewhat non-essential item. Even though the 2-quarter recession has ended, I think it's all just being propped up by government stimulus. That is starting to run out. We saw a definite increase in customer acquisition costs as the first step down in stimulus occurred. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure.
And and I think that's only going to get a little bit worse as time goes on.
Yeah, makes sense. Shit. And we've talked about you guys as co-founders. Is there a CEO? There's no...
We're not that formal yet, no.
Yeah, right. So people are going to listen to this and wonder how you make decisions, though. If there's no sort of formal structure,
we just chat about it and go, what do you think's going to be better?
Yeah, we decide between the two of us, and I think a lot of the time we're on the same page. So
right, and when you disagree,
have we disagreed that much?
Whoever is more forceful, I suppose.
Whoever's the loudest.
Sometimes we just go and do it. It won't matter. It's like, who cares what he reckons?
Ask for forgiveness, not permission, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, geez. Yeah. All right. Well, awesome. Do you guys... So there's one thing that I ask every guest on the show towards the end of it. What's your relationship like with self-doubt?
Early on, I think it was pretty high, but it's resurfaced for me a little bit recently. Just the climate is so intensely unpredictable. And it's just difficult to make educated guesses or decent decisions.
Right.
It was not so good at the start. Awesome during the middle, and now at the moment it's a little bit all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
And you, Jack?
I think I'm honestly getting less and less of that as I age, I suppose. I'm probably a little bit too confident in my abilities these days, to be quite frank. I think I grew up with just debilitating self-doubt, and now I'm just like, I can do anything when I probably can't, but as long as you think it, I think you can get a good 80% of the way there, right?
Yeah. Pretty much.
So, yeah, that's not really too much of an issue for me. But in terms of what Gauranga was saying with market trends and whatnot, right now is a pretty rough time.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that anyway. So
Unfortunately not. No, you cannot force it.
Yeah, right. So what do you guys think is going to happen over the next year or two? Not necessarily just to you guys, but you're in the business game now, and what's Australia going to look like? What's the entrepreneurship sector going to look like? What do you think is going to happen?
Next 5 years, I reckon it's going to hit crazy levels. I mean, it's only getting easier and easier to do cool things that companies that generally had to have big budgets to do. You can do it for free now most of the time. So, there's obviously that pretty strong trend. So that's exciting. And in Australia, it's kicking ass as well. In the next 2 years, though, no idea.
Right. Gauranga?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit scared about the next couple of years, particularly because, I don't know, we're looking at negative interest rates potentially, and a whole wave of insolvency potentially come March next year. An interesting fact out of the RBA, well, I don't know if it was the RBA, it might have been, but insolvency over the past 2 quarters has been half of what it generally is.
It's because you can't go insolvent.
Well, because you can't go insolvent, and because it's all been propped up by this stimulus.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. It's sort of just a bit of a band-aid over the wound, and it's all gonna sort of start to collapse in March next year.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the doomsday prediction.
Certified prediction.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think.
Get ready, guys.
I think it only makes sense, and I think that's going to deter people from trying to go it alone. I mean, I'd like to agree with him, and he is right. It's only getting easier and easier to get in the game. But I think it's going to turn people off for a little while.
Right, and you don't think because people will be out of work and stuff that they won't turn to trying to build businesses?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming along, guys. Really good to chat to you and get to know your story. If people want to come and find you or find Airshare, where should they go?
Airshare.com, or find us on LinkedIn. I think is an all right place to find us.
Best place to find you?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Jack, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Virgo.
Gauranga, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
It was fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Remember to subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.